I'm
And
learning as long as I've done this. Every time I switch to something better, I'm like, I have to learn this. But it's so
yeah,
learned so many different skill sets, right?
it's an experience. I've been considering switching to this as well, but not right
Mhm.
now.
All right. So here we are. Let me see what it looks like in widescreen. Okay, because I don't need to see all of that other stuff that's going on there on the side. It's distracting. I love the background. Can you see the blue border?
I
I
see
really
the
like.
blue. It's really nice.
I do like that. All right. So I think we are live. Welcome, friends. This is another episode of the Immigrant Experience in America. We are pleased to bring you the story of Manarak, and she's from Bonaire in the Caribbean. Welcome, Bonaire. Manarak, forgive me, we'll edit that out.
That's okay. No worries. I mean, we're live, so I don't know if we can edit it out, but thank you. I think you weren't wrong. I am currently live from Bonaire. So, yeah, thank you for having me on. And I'm excited to get to do a second episode with you, of course, you being on my podcast first, and now I'm on yours.
Very good. I'm excited to learn your story since I gave you a version of mine. I was very intrigued when we had our interview about what you're doing and to learn about another Caribbean island because I don't know very much about the smaller ones, unfortunately. I'm sorry, and I haven't really. I think I've been to Dominican Republic. I went to Cuba, and of course, I'm from Jamaica. I think that's the extent of my travel throughout the Caribbean.
Well,
I really do need to see the other places, so I'm intrigued.
it's actually funny. Before I go into my story, it's actually funny that you mentioned that because back, let's say, at the start of the internet in the 90s, when I would meet people and I say I'm from the Caribbean, the first thing they were like, "Oh, you're Jamaican." It was like the only thing they knew. I was like, "No, there's other islands here." So I think
Yeah,
it's
I
funny that
know. I'm
you
so sorry. I'm so sorry. I think it's the music. The music,
yeah.
Bob Marley gets a lot of publicity, the reggae, and
Mhm.
so, and I think maybe the food, the jerk chicken, is pretty popular. And then,
Yeah, yeah.
track and field, when they're competing, it just gets a lot of publicity. So I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
It's
But yes,
okay.
we are not all from Jamaica, right? We're only the country's like the last time I checked, it was 5+ million people. So there's a lot
Wow.
more people in other places in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Though we are by comparison like micro, because I think we're at maybe 20,000 people or something. And when I was growing up, it used to be like around 10, 13,000. So can you imagine that for us, even with that 20,000, it feels like, oh my God, there's so much more people
yes,
around that,
that's massive,
right?
amazing. Oh my goodness. So that means you
Yeah.
literally almost know everybody on your island. I mean, like, well,
You
you
would
don't,
think.
obviously, but
You would think.
well, wow, but you know a lot of most people probably because 20,000.
Well, the thing is, I know most people by face, and this is an issue I have. So a lot of people would be able to say like, "Oh, that's so and so's daughter," or the mom of, or and I'm like, I'm equally lost when you start telling me they're who's relative because I just don't know. And I guess that's for me that I've kind of put as I should maybe get to know more people on the islands because it's not so many that I can't know who's who and who's whose daughter and those types of things. But it's usually that I'm kind of in my own bubble, kind of working on things that I don't really, in that sense, a bit introverted, which is kind of ironic for the line of work I do, right? And I'm like um, out there, public, but still in my own community. I'm very people are like once they get to know me and what I'm doing, they're like, well, how come we don't know that you're doing all of these things?
Right, right.
Yeah.
I like to say that I'm an ambivert, right?
Uh,
I've taken a personality test, and when I was younger, I got that I was an extrovert, but as I've gotten older, it's switched to being, I think I've gotten to know myself better and observe my
Yeah.
energy and what energizes me. I think I'm much more of an ambivert. Like I can be very extroverted in one-on-one conversations, small conversations with friends and familiar people, or maybe like a roundtable conversation with
Yeah.
colleagues or people I don't know. But when it comes to like large groups, we go to like festivals or my daughter's school and there's a bunch of people that I don't know, man, my anxiety comes out. So, and I do know that I need to withdraw and have my quiet time in order to replenish. I replenish in
Mhm.
quiet spaces, in
Yeah.
nature, getting rest. Some people, and sometimes I do get energized by certain people's energy, not everybody.
Hmm.
Like when I'm around my cousins or family, I feel like I'm very energized by them. I leave feeling full and excited and replenished when I'm with family. So, but I think I'm more of an ambivert. So you're probably, I'm not sure where you fall
Yeah.
on the spectrum.
Yeah.
You'd have
Yeah.
to say.
It makes sense. I'm somewhere on that line as well. It really depends on the vibes. Sometimes how open I am and my own energy level. As you said, in groups. I had a moment a couple of weeks ago that we had a workshop, and but it was also like because I'm doing a campaign, just a project for a client, and we were there early. We interviewed the one that was doing the workshop, and then we stayed for the workshop. So after all of that, I was drained, and my intern was like, "You should go and network with these people," and I was like, "If you don't leave me alone right now, I am spent. I don't have the energy for that right now." And the funny thing is, on our way home, she was like, "Let's go have a drink," and there was some pride event going on, and I was like, okay, I have energy for that. And she was like, I thought you were spent. And I was like, yeah, how do I explain to you? I didn't have energy for that other group of people, but I have energy to sit at like a cafe and just relax and just not go out and network and have to tell my story all over again to like a million people each time. Like that's kind of my issue with networking. I have to start over each time, and go like, oh, I'm who and I do this and yeah. But anyway,
It takes
we
energy.
digress.
It really
Yeah,
does take energy to, you're almost like constantly code switching. Do you know what I mean when I say code
yeah,
switching? Right, you're
yes,
constantly kind of editing yourself depending on your audience and who you're speaking to. It takes a
yeah,
lot of energy, mental energy, emotional energy to connect and build rapport. It's not that easy. I actually, I
yeah,
mean, I don't actually like networking either because I get
mhm,
so anxious with going through that process of constantly in the space of an hour or two, just constantly
mhm,
like floating
yeah,
around the room trying to figure out like who to approach, and you don't know if they're warm and friendly. And so
hmm,
um but I know it's needed in our line of work and I need to do more of it, but I totally relate to that.
yeah,
But in the sense of time, I know we have
yeah,
just about maybe 40 minutes or so. I wanted
hmm,
to get into your own personal story, so tell us a
yeah,
bit about um I'm intrigued about your name, Manarak. I don't know if you would give us a short explanation and tell us
hmm,
about Bonaire in itself. What are current issues? What is life like there? What do you eat? What's an everyday sense for a small island of 20,000 people and what that's like? Because
yeah.
I don't know much about Bonaire. So educate us, please.
Yeah. I was considering before when you were asking what to call me, I was like, should I give that explanation again? Because I felt like I took a lot of airtime with that. But I'll keep it short. I was born Radinka Ana Marie Ustasia, and somehow I always had questions about my name. I found it weird that I have three names and people aren't using all my three names. And then I had a separate conundrum with my mom, and I felt um, Radinka is felt like a little girl's name. And I said, what when I'm growing up? So there was always something with my name. And at some point, I went down a conspiracy rabbit hole that said that, well, the government owns your name and blah blah blah. And then me always having had some kind of issue with my name. Not that I hate it; it's just I had questions. Um, I looked at my name and I realized that there's a lot of A's like in my name. So I just took everything that is an A and adjacent to it. So RAKAANMA. And once I had that, I rearranged it. And here it's important to know that in Dutch, maan means moon. And I am, in that sense, a bit of a lunatic, if I can say it. I love like everything moon and, full moon, the new moons, and everything like this. So I saw an opportunity and took it. And Arak is kind of random in that sense. So I really just thought about the moon part, and the rest kind of flowed. Um, and of gray, because I find gray areas very interesting. So when you say something is like, no, it's black, or no, it's white, I always try to, I always, as I said, I'm someone that questions things, right? So I always question, is it really black and is it really white? So I try to find like what is the nuance in things, and what is this middle ground. So that is why I added of gray. First, I had it in Papiamento, which is my mother tongue, Dishi Nishi. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like a mouthful, isn't it? Manarak Dishi Nishi. So I just I made it of gray just to like shorten it.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty cool. I like it.
yeah,
I like it. For people who don't know what your mother tongue is, it would be hard for them to be figuring out how to pronounce it. So I can see, but
yeah,
Mananak is really easy. I like the
yeah,
Maan, which means moon in
yeah.
one of your languages. So tell us a bit about your native people, native tongue,
Mhm.
and leading into Bonaire and life there.
Yeah. So here on this island is one of the six Dutch Caribbean islands, as they call them. And there's a long history with obviously slavery, and also um, with them being also important for like the World War II, because we're close at the coast with Venezuela. So obviously there's oil. So, there's some interest there why, the Dutch is keeping us in their archives, if I can put it like that. And yeah, so the history of my people is basically that we are mixed um, with the Africans. Some people have more mixed with the Native Americans. You have mixed with the European. Kind of similar to a lot of the Caribbean islands, right? Because of what happened here, and all of that trade and the slavery, we're all kind of mixed in that sense. My own mix, I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know that my great grandma on my mother's side was native from Venezuela, so I know at least that part. And I always say, if you look at my hair, it's obviously African, right? So I cannot I cannot say I don't have any African in me. And my grandma, or I started looking into my family tree, which is not so easy to track because of lack of documentation. But I do know there was also an what they call house Negroes, for another word, which is someone that was mixed from an African enslaved person with the master of the house.
Right.
Um, so I
Plantation.
know yeah, exactly. So I know I have those, European, African, and Native American mixed in me. Percentages, I don't know, and it's debated that it's a very colonial way of looking at things. If you go into like the quantum uh, like how many percentage of your blood is this. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested, but at the same, because I know it's like a very colonial thing. kind of weary of doing like a test in that sense. And for now, I just know that I'm a mix of all the three of those things. So yeah, I might not know exactly which part of Africa and these things, but I guess we can kind of guess that most people came from, West Africa and at some point also the Congo. So those are mostly the options that you have in that
Right,
sense.
right.
Yeah. And yeah, and this my people, so we're mixed, as I said. Yeah, some people would be more Spanish. We have a lot of Spanish immigrants as well here that have been here for years and they're integrated. You have also Dutch people that have been here for years, and you obviously have also a new stream of people coming. So you see those differences in the society. Our local language is Papiamento, which is something that was born from the slavery era, and it's actually very similar to what they speak at Cape Verde, from what I understood. Um, and it's basically a trade language that was born because you have like the Portuguese people, you have the Africans, you have other people from Europe that, yeah, you're trading, but don't really understand each other. So you're trying, like, it gets born from, um, maybe we have our word for table is Portuguese, mesa. Our word for chair is Dutch, stoel. So you see those, like we take
Mixed,
um,
mixed, right. It's kind of
mixed.
like the
Yeah,
dialects that we find in Jamaica called patois. It's a mix
yeah,
of like
the patois.
African dialects, African languages, and
Yeah,
English, right? Because they weren't able to pronounce TH in certain of the letters in the alphabet, it
hmm,
became very Africanized, and so it's kind of a
yeah,
mix of things. So it's the same idea. And then
yeah,
in Haiti, it's you have Creole French, which is like a part of the actual French mixed in with other things as well. So I guess you
yeah,
find that mix
exactly.
that develops over
Yeah.
time.
And what I find interesting as well is that the Native American language survived in a lot of names for the trees and things of nature. So yeah, I think that's, we don't really use words as such, or the language otherwise, except for the names of like the local trees and these things and birds. Um, yeah, and we also speak Dutch because we are. Our nationality is Dutch. We have Dutch passport from birth and everything like that. And we speak English, obviously, and Spanish because we are. Yeah, there are a lot of Spanish people here, and we are so close to Venezuela. I would say, maybe controversially, that geographically we are more Venezuelan then we would be Dutch because obviously the Netherlands is like 9 hours away, and we are literally at the coast of Venezuela. Um, I know there's some conflict between the Netherlands and Venezuela, and I don't want to be quoted as starting any kind of problem in that area. But it's, I mean, once you look at the map, I don't think you can really um, avoid a similar conclusion. Um, but yeah, what else can I tell you about here? When I was
What's
growing
life
up,
like? Yeah, what's
yeah,
life like? Like food you eat, festivals, music, what type of
mhm.
influences in the culture?
Yeah, I think music is very much influenced by like African rhythms, and I would say Latin as well. But at the end, the Latin American music is also influenced by African, so it's very African in that sense. And the food also, we
Um,
have. Hello.
I lost you there for a second. Are you back?
Oh, I'm
Yeah, we
here.
lost
Yes.
yeah, we lost connection
Okay.
there. Okay, so the African influence over the music is pretty strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and also with the food and with like when you're celebrating like cultural things, it's very present there. Um, see, the maybe the most Dutch thing celebrate it's like a Sinterklaas, which is also kind of debated because you have them in blackface, and so it's becoming a bit less popular. There was protest in the Netherlands, but it's still to some extent celebrated here. Um, we have like Harvest Festival. We have yeah, as I said, the typical music that they will play during the regatta as well. It's all that African influence, and we have the food is a lot of stews. Like if we're talking like the really the local cuisine is stews, goat stew, plantain stew, papaya stew. Um, you have the cornmeal. I don't know if you guys eat that in Jamaica as well, but I know there's a couple of other Caribbean islands that have that. It's like we call it funchi. Africans call it fufu, and you eat it with like the savory dishes, kind of like um, yeah, just with cornmeal. I don't know how you would
So
call
basically,
that
you're
in English.
cooking it and letting the water kind of evaporate or dry, and then it's a bit moist, but it's not soupy. Um,
Yeah, it's a bit for us. We make it a bit harder even. So
right.
it's more like
Okay.
um, a cake. I'm not
Oh,
really a cake. Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Right. We have
That's
we
what we
use
call it.
we have something that we call turn cornmeal. It's more like closer to the consistency of porridge, but not as watery.
Mm,
It's a little bit drier. And I think they have it in Brazil, and I can't think of the name right now. In the
yeah,
flour field, they have Native Americans have fry bread. We have Johnny cakes or fried
yeah, yeah.
dumplings. The other cultures have their tortillas, or the Indians have their naan,
Hmm.
and so there's always a
Yeah,
version of flour or cornmeal in some culture somewhere.
yeah. So for us, it would be the one with the cornmeal you said, but we make it a bit thicker, that it's almost like cakey. And we eat Johnny cake, but not necessarily like with, let's say, a lunch or something. We eat it like as a snack. Like we have a Johnny cake filled with. So I know y'all have a Johnny cake that's like a bit more like a ball, right? I think we
Yes,
have
or
it.
it could be
We have
flat
yeah,
or like
yeah,
long.
yeah. We do the flat one, and we fill it with like cheese and uh you call it. I can find the word chicken. I was thinking galinha, but it's my language, of course. With the chicken, with beef. I guess they would eat it with tuna as well. And we have pastichis, which is um, I can't find any of the names in English for some reason. It's like a pastry, also filled with
Okay.
similar things. So yeah, we make croquette, just like a rolled beef thing. And I guess this is also kind of the Dutch influence because they eat croquette, but they eat factory croquette. We make our own croquette, but so it's slightly different. And we make like cheese balls. Yeah, these are all snacks that I'm talking about now. So
Oh, it
this,
sounds delicious though.
if you have a
It sounds
party, these
delicious.
are like the things that you would find. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds
Um,
delicious. I guess the African influence really, once you go across certain countries, you can see the influence. Like I went to Costa Rica last year, and there's the Caribbean coast was um,
mm,
highly influenced by like Afro-Caribbean people, and it's survived. It's mixed in, the language is mixed in with like English, Jamaican patois, and
mhm.
Spanish, and the words that they use to name foods and how they make it. And they make the sandwich out of the Johnny cake,
Yeah,
the flat
yeah, yeah.
one, and so forth. And so it's quite interesting. Yeah, I can't wait to visit. Now you have me intrigued. I want to come and see,
Yes.
experience the place. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful.
We'll
Anywhere
do
with the beach, I'll go. Anywhere with the
we'll
beach.
do an episode on the beach then, live from the beach.
Yes, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Okay, all right. So that's life in Bonaire. And
Yeah.
so tell us about, what brought you to international study, and what was it like in the educational system coming up, and why you wanted to study abroad.
Yeah. So here, for me, the educational system, it's very colonial. So we get like the old books from the Netherlands, and that is what they teach us on. I guess sometimes it feels like they experiment with some things here before making it, deciding to do it at large in the Netherlands. Or yeah, there's just now it's maybe a bit more up to par. But yeah, it was just a lot of like rehashing of Dutch things, and that can be it's a bit weird because you're in a different context here, and we don't have trains, for example, but we're learning how to calculate, doing math based on a problem that's talking about the train while you've never seen or been on a train.
Mm-hmm.
So like that kind of thing. And in the end, I felt as a child, especially as a teenager, I guess I felt a bit claustrophobic, because I couldn't like you can like drive somewhere and go to another country, or have a new experience. And I did find that as someone that questions things a lot, um, I felt like I had a different mindset than my people here, and um, I wanted to know more and I wanted to experience more. So once I got the opportunity, that I was old enough, and I went, and that I could go abroad. Initially, I thought I would go to the U.S. because it's closer, but it's very expensive to study there. And we get, as we have the Dutch nationality, we get um, not tuition, it's like student loan, for like studying in the Netherlands, and the tuition there is cheaper as well. So that's why I decided to go to the Netherlands, and it was an experience. I really struggled at sometimes. You don't
Mm-hmm.
realize once you just think, okay, I want to go, I want to leave, I want to experience, but you don't think about the day to day things, paying the bills, making sure um, your rent is paid, and finding a place to live in, a proper place to live in. Um, you don't really think about these things before or you think about it, but you don't realize how difficult it can be, um, to have to go about these things on your own. But I don't think I would change that experience because it has shaped me, um, in who I am. All the struggles, or all the stress of how am I going to pay rent sometimes. Well, this is after I finished my studies, that you don't have like the student loan anymore that's coming instantly, and you have to find a job, and you have to make sure paying the taxes or doing your taxes to begin with, all of these things, and even dating and going through heartbreak, and uh, just healing on my own. All of these things shaped who I am today. So um, I wouldn't change that. I'm happy I made that decision and went there, and also got to understand the Dutch culture from a different, like, first-hand experience, which is different. So even though, as I said before, we get a lot of second-hand Dutch things here, and you're learning or reading about the train, it is different. Even the language is different once you're there. Because I say, like, yes, we learn Dutch here in school. My school was in Dutch, but my teachers, most of them spoke Dutch as a second language as well. So
Mm-hmm.
once you get there, and I thought I spoke Dutch, but I was like, what is this? I mean, I understood them, but there's, nuances, like how they build the sentence up, and um, certain words that you don't use typically, and certain expressions, um, that kind of thing. Like you don't get that here. You get that having lived there, and also the way the Dutch people think, and the culture. You're really like immersed in that, so you get to understand a lot more. And I see that now being back, that there's certain things or certain ways I handle something, and my mom was like, "Oh no, but what if?" I'm like, "No," you know. I give a very like example I mentioned before. I have a project with a client, and um, in the Netherlands, vacation is holy. Like if you have vacation, you have vacation. So right now we're in the project, and everyone else is on vacation right now, and I'm coordinating locally, and because the campaign is going on, and I'm editing all of the videos and all that, I cannot take vacation right now. But I had decided that I'm gonna take vacation mid-September, because then I would have done my part. The project, because it's a project within a project, and the project that is within that project would have been rounding off or rounded off, which is my part. And I have 2 weeks to write a report about it, and then I go on vacation.
Great.
And the rest of the reports is not my problem, because y'all went on vacation already. Now it's my turn. And I was telling my mom this, and she got really, she was like, I nervous, like, oh my god, and like, like the anxiety of, well, what if they never hire her again, and blah, blah, blah. But I understand, having lived there, that this is my negotiating strength. Y'all are on vacation now. I am running the project. I run it until it's finished at the end of August. I will write my report before I go on vacation. Leave me alone the rest of the time, right? And
Those healthy boundaries that are
yeah,
in certain cultures that are like so foreign to people who are in more collectivist ways of
yeah,
living. It's like,
yes,
what? You mean you can actually say no? You can actually negotiate. You can actually say, no, that doesn't work for me. Yes,
right,
actually,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So yeah, there's those little things that sometimes, when I see my mom or someone else in my environment, I see their reaction, and I'm like, oh, I have that from having lived amongst them and having worked amongst them, and studied with them. I've learned the way to communicate, and I've learned how to negotiate certain things, which I really had to learn how to negotiate, because I said I come from this kind of culture where you cannot say no, and you have to, you're gonna go with it even though you can't, even though it's like, giving you unnecessary stress in these things. So yeah, um, yeah, I had to learn that, and I'm glad that I learned that, and I went through that. But I think you
Yeah,
wanted to talk
great,
about
great,
more
great.
things. I
Right.
feel like
Well,
I'm
I'm
dragging this.
curious though. I'm curious. I can see my audience wondering what are the languages that are taught in school? Is it all three? Dutch, English,
um,
and did you say Spanish? But you said your school was Dutch, but what is typical across the island?
yeah, so now the system changed. So from my generation upwards and even older, the whole school thing was in Dutch. So let's say if you had biology, that was Dutch, math was Dutch, and then you had also like Dutch class, and in, I think it's not high school. Is that preschool? I guess. So what you have before high school, is that elementary school?
Middle
I guess
school. So
middle
elementary,
school.
middle school, and then high school. Yes.
Well, let's say elementary and middle would be full Dutch, and I think maybe in the later classes of middle school we had some papiamento. I'm not sure, um, but Then once I got to high school, we really had Papiamento as its own subject, and we had Spanish, and we had English and Dutch. And for the other people, so you have different levels. For the people with the levels above, I think they could also choose French. Um, but it's mostly just our lived experience. So we speak Papiamento at home. We get the Dutch at school. We watched English television, and let's say our parents watched a lot of Spanish television.
Mm,
So you have Spanish people on the island, and you have people like from the US also coming as tourists or living here part time, so you get to speak English with them as well. So yeah, that's kind of the experience. And now you have they switched the elementary and middle school to be in Papiamento because they said you need to kind of dominate. Yeah, you need to know your mother tongue uh, to such a good level that it will be easy to learn other languages as because you have a good solid foundation instead of like with my generation that it was like fragmented little bits of each language. Yeah.
mhm. That's very good. Very good. I've heard the conversation being thrown around in Jamaica as well, about making patois the first language of instruction because most people speak English in school, formal, mostly on the British side, very British.
Mhm.
However, in everyday life, people use patois quite a bit, and there's some
Mhm.
children who are not really exposed to the formal educational system, and
Mhm.
they really struggle with on the English side. And I've heard it being discussed with like even in West Africa and Sierra Leone, for example, that I'm exposed to, they have the um, English, some people call it broken English, influence mixed in with other things called Creole. And they wanted to
Mhm.
make that the mother tongue, like the first language of instruction. So it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people struggle, and they're not acknowledging that there is a different mother tongue from English, right? And so students often struggle. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. Sounds like they're bringing that over where you are. So I don't want to lose time because it's just
That's okay.
ticking
I'm
away.
flexible by the way. It's
Okay, very
the
good.
it's the perks of being your own boss.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So I
Yeah.
wanted to dive more into your international student experience. Once you've now made the decision
Mhm.
to go abroad, you considered the US, it was too expensive. It worked out financially to
Mhm.
go to the Netherlands. So you're there. Any particular moments of challenge or success in preparation for studying abroad that you wanted to highlight? Or you can just go right into your international student experience once being in the Netherlands.
Well, I had so you have two ways of going from here to the Netherlands and studying, and one you could join what they call the Beurseilen, which is that you sign up with a organization here, and you get both study financing from them and from the Netherlands, and they will help you in the process of preparing, and they will go with you on that initial trip to have you situated and show you a bit around and that kind of thing. I did not do that. I I planned everything myself. I chose. I looked for my studies. At first, very important to know we have like um, you have different levels. So you have starting from high school, depending which level you finish at high school determines which levels you can continue next. And I did kind of like a middle level purely because so it's based on more practice, more theory. and the middle level is like leveled theory and practice. And I am someone that prefers to learn by practice. Does not mean that I would not be able to do the higher theory level, but it's just it bores me to only learn theory. So I kept myself in the middle level on purpose, meaning that once I finished that, my options were either go a year of that higher level and do a year of the full theory thing, and then I could have continued to a University of Applied Science, or I could take like another middle round that is kind of like a vocational school. And I went for the vocational school, and I wanted to study something creative. Um, but I let myself be influenced and convinced by my family to study tourism, because obviously, Caribbean island love tourism. People see that as like you're gonna get a lot of money if you study tourism. So I went for the tourism studies, and I studied first front office and information clerk. So the front office is like, working at hotels and these things. And information clerk is someone that works at like a tourist office, giving people information. And once I finished that, I went to uh, I did an additional year of that because I was level 3, and I went to level 4, an additional year. And there I studied, it's called Luchtvaartdienstverlening, which means aviation services. So I studied to be a stewardess, basically. And then after that, you can continue to a University of Applied Science. So by that time, I was older. I had a lot of practice experience, and I thought, well, I always said I could do one of these higher levels if I wanted to. So let me, challenge myself and see how that goes. And first I went because I knew I wanted to have my own business. If one thing I learned during tourism is that I did not want to have a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. And, this kind of hierarchy working environment that got me really depressed. I was so depressed at some point that I thought, if this is life, I'd rather just move back to the Caribbean and live in a tent next to the ocean. Like, I cannot do this. So um, then I went and I did was small business and retail management. But that after a couple of months, I quickly realized that it was too economic for me, in the sense that I care a lot also about like the environment and the social aspect of things. So I cannot sit and be like, okay, I'm just gonna make money and not care about what impact my business has on the environment and people, and just care about the money. um, so then I searched for something else, and I switched before the end of that year. Well, I had to start it the next year, but anyway, it's minor details. um, I switched to international development management. The perks of that was also that it was in English, and that is easier for me, because at the University of Applied Science level, the Dutch was getting more difficult for me. I was already struggling with it. And when I saw Dutch people struggling with their own language, I thought, no, let me get out of here. So once I found something in English, I was like, okay, this is much better. And yeah, I studied that, and there I majored in. Back then it was rural development and innovation. They have since changed the name to regional development and innovation, which is a name that I prefer to use because it makes more sense. I feel like if I say rural development and innovation, it's really like confined to rural areas, but really you learn certain sets of tools and skills that it doesn't matter if it's rural or urban area that you're working in. You can adapt it to that. And Yes, and then I minored. I, so the thing to realize about international development management is that a lot of people that choose this come in very idealistic. We want to change the world. We are the hippies, and we're very fish. Like you see that also. If you look at our school and you look at the students, you can take out the international development management students just like that, just from how we dress and behave. And um, so yeah, we come in very idealistic, and then little by little it gets chipped on you, like, okay, you get a case study, for example, and there's this issue, and immediately you're like, oh, I want to solve it that way. And they're like, okay, but if you solve it that way, it creates these issues. And you're like, okay. So what I'm trying to say, it can be very depressing at the end, because you're working with very complex issues that cannot just be solved by introducing this cookie cutter thing. And and so by the time that I had to choose a minor, I was so kind of disillusioned with the sector of development work that I saw the opportunity to just be creative for 6 months, and I took it. So I did creativity and art at work, and it was very refreshing. We just, as it sounds, we just were creative and made art for those 6 months. We had visual arts class, we had music class, we had drama, um, we had another class that was kind of like just experimenting, creativity. And my favorite memory of that class is that there was a beatboxer, and like the one that makes beats with his mouth. He was like one of the best Dutch beatboxers of the Netherlands, and he was in our class. And there was one day the teacher said, "Okay, you're gonna teach us this beatboxing thing," and we went out. And we just stood on tables in the cafeteria and things, beatboxing, and which was not allowed at the end of the day. But we were just like, people were just looking at us like, what are you doing? Don't you have class? And that was our class. But yeah, we just got to do these things. And I was very excited, to the extent that once I finished school, and I thought about, I'm just gonna do this creative thing. I'm just gonna be an artist. um, but as in the middle of pursuing that artistry, I'm still up to date with like the development work side of things. And I did start working at some point at my old school, and so you're
Mhm.
getting a bit more of these topics again. So it's like a push and pull between, okay, I'm trying to be an artist over here, but I'm still kind of in this world of development. And um, especially learning more about climate. I did a course on um, to be a climate coach, as they call it, which you just kind of help people to be more conscious about how their lifestyle is like influencing like the climate, and how carbon intensive it is, and these things. And then also Greenpeace. So you have Greenpeace the Netherlands, and they have like a chapter in Bonaire, and they commissioned a university in the Netherlands to do a research on Bonaire. You don't have a lot of research in general that are Bonaire specific, and let alone about climate. So this is like the research that has been done so far, and they have shown how with the sea level rising, a lot of parts of Bonaire can become permanently or most of the time underwater. And Yeah, and that in combination with after COVID, I had finally visit home. It was the biggest gap since my years of living in the Netherlands. It's the first time that I wasn't home for like 3 years in a row, and I came home and I saw my parents, and they're getting older. So my dad is turning 80 next year, and my mom is 72. If I say it right, yeah. So there's 7 years difference, and I saw them, and at that point, I was considering to live in Spain, to move to Spain. I did want to leave the Netherlands. I wanted to go to Spain because I had done my thesis there, and my thesis commissioner wants to do a project with me since then. So I was considering moving to Spain. But once I saw my parents, and there's the issue of this house that I'm supposed to inherit and all of that, I thought, I will never get the opportunity to see my parents grow old again. There's just this one time that I can see that, and that was for me ultimately like deciding for, okay, for the house, for my parents, I will move back to Bonaire. And my preparation to come back is where I started thinking, well, okay, I've been quite active in the Netherlands by that point. I have like artist group that I was a part of. So I was going to art class, I was going to dance class weekly, doing all of these different things. So I knew that I had to keep myself busy. And that is where I started planning, because I already had a business there. I was already doing the Manarak thing, and I really started planning. Okay, how can I take Manarak to a higher level? Being in Bonaire, what is going to be my focus? And I started planning out. That's when I did the climate coach thing as well. And um, yeah, I don't know if I did I answer your question, Simone, because I feel like I
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. You're taking us on a journey of how you
yeah,
got to deciding what to study.
yeah.
But I'm curious to know what was on a human level, interacting with people, everyday life. What was that like?
Mhm.
What's the housing like in the Netherlands? I've never been there. I think I've come through like Heathrow or Charles de Gaulle, and kind of
Mhm.
interact with different spaces where you hear Dutch speaking, or you'll see the airlines or whatever, and people.
Yeah.
So I wonder what on the immigrant experience, since this is our topic of our podcast, like what was as a native from Bonaire, even though you had the language, you talked about adjusting to, oh, they don't quite speak like us. They have nuances in the way
Yeah.
they express things. But what was the everyday like while you were there? Like, missing your family, how did you make friends, build relationships? What was it like as a quote
Mm.
unquote, I don't know how you self-identified. You identify as Afro-Caribbean. I know you're mixed, so I don't know how you identify as an Afro-Caribbean person in the Netherlands. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. I think my identity wise, Antillian. That's how we were known, because we were the Dutch Antilles first. I guess the Antilles, there's a lot of like, geographically, there's a thing with most Caribbean islands being the Antilles, but I'm sidetracking. So we were the Dutch Antilles as like a country within the kingdom, all the 6 islands. And first, Aruba went out, I think, in the 80s, if I'm quoting it correctly. And then for some time, so Aruba went out as in its own country within the kingdom, and Dutch Antilles and the Netherlands. And then that got broken up. And so they're all still the in the kingdom, but it's like different configurations, which I won't go into right now because it's going to be a long story.
Yeah,
But
people can go read up about it. Just go Google.
yeah,
There's things online. Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, so for us, we still identify as Antillian. I think especially us from the ABC Islands, so Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao,
Mm-hmm.
maybe Curacao and Bonaire more, really identify as Antillean people. And yeah, so that part of the identity and the day-to-day life, it said it was a struggle, especially in the beginning, as I said, to adjust, first with my thick accent, and people not really understanding you, and you're kind of feeling insecure about having to like um, repeat yourself constantly, and not being sure if they really understand you, kind of lost in translation in a sense. And then I think there's also the issue of which part of the Netherlands, because I moved to a couple of places, and some parts are kind of more conservative and not really that open to people from the outside than other parts of the Netherlands. So, and it's not only the parts, it's also the people. So you can have people in the city that's also, kind of racist or against people from the outside. I had this my first couple of months. I had a very interesting experience that I will never forget. And are you familiar with the politician Geert Wilders? Okay, so he's kind of like the Dutch nationalist. Some would say kind of neo-Nazi-ish vibes
Mm.
of the Netherlands, and um, he was getting more and more popular at the time that I moved there in 2010, and I had my first internship at a travel agency, and I remember there was the first time I got to vote there and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know who to vote for. I voted for the Party of the Animals because I thought, okay, I care about animals and I don't know who else to vote for, so let me vote for you at least. And I got to work the next day, and I was sitting next to this Dutch girl, blonde. Uh, don't remember. I don't want to say blonde, blue eyes because I don't remember her eye colors. I remember she was blonde, very Dutch, and we're talking about um, the voting, and I said, well, I voted for the Party of the Animals and blah blah blah. And she goes to me and she's like, I voted for Geert Wilders. Like that, she told me this, and I was like, and then she was like, yeah, because all of those outsiders. And I mind you, I had just moved to the Netherlands, so I was an outsider myself, and I was like,
Yes, right.
well, what do you mean? You know? And I was like, you do know I'm an outsider? And she was like, well, no, you're half blood. And I was like, well, um, no, I'm half from Curacao because my dad is from Curacao, and I'm half Bonairean, but I am not half Dutch, if that's what you mean. But it's just crazy that she felt so comfortable telling me that because she thought that I looked, or my proximity to whiteness, that I looked half Dutch. And even if I was half Dutch, why would you say that? Because then, like, if I was half Dutch, that means that I would have a parent that was not Dutch, and it would still not be okay to tell me that.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was
Mm.
wild, but it gave me this
Like, this is
insight.
funny. Go ahead, go ahead. I'm trying to adjust the lighting because I don't like how
Ah,
it's like making me looking yellow, or I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
just
I
turn
get
it
you.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. I was like, but it gave me an insight, and because I saw her later, laughing and smiling with these outsiders that she was talking about.
Mm.
Um, where it kind of gave me an insight in how some of these people, because I don't want to put all Dutch people on the same plate, but some of them are like this. They're laughing and smiling in your space, and then they're voting for neo Nazis to get you out of the country.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So yeah, and it's also I think interesting that um, A lot of the Dutch didn't even know that we, as the Dutch Caribbean, had Dutch nationality. There's just so little they know about us, and they, for the majority, kind of see us as outsiders. I always say that I am Dutch in every other country except the Netherlands. Because if I go to the US and you see my passport, they're like, "Oh, you're Dutch." But even when I was living in the Netherlands, and I would fly back and forth between home and there, and I would get back, and I would be living at that point years already in the Netherlands. The people from the immigrant, like the checkpoint, would be like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I live here." What do you mean? Yeah, so there's definitely that tension. I've met wonderful um, Dutch people that I had friendships with, but there's always, even with them, sometimes that sense of, the colonized and the colonizer, and that experience that I have had being born in a Dutch colony and then living, let's say, in the motherland with your colonizers, that they cannot fully comprehend. And even for the most well meaning of people, like I had a teacher that um, she was like, "No, you're Dutch." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And I said, "My passport is Dutch." And I think she wanted to show me that she accepted me as Dutch, but she could not comprehend the the kind of battle within oneself as the subject of the colonization. That no matter how much you tell me that you accept me as Dutch, which I think you're trying to be nice, and we're trying to show me that I'm welcome and open for you, but there's a whole set of experiences that I've lived that has told me that you are in fact not Dutch. And you as a well-meaning person with a good heart can try to tell me as much as you can that you accept me as Dutch, but most of your people have showed me that I'm not. Um, so yeah, when it's difficult, even with like the intern, she went home last week. I had a Dutch intern here for a project, and she was shocked at the coloniality of the relationship between Dutch people and the people here, and just even within our project that we're working on. And she was like, "No, but we gotta do this, we gotta do that." And I kept telling her, "You are just waking up to this. I've been in this. I've been 30. Well, how old am I? I'm 34. I've been 34 years in this. I've experienced this at different levels. I've been angry. I've tried to get Dutch people to understand me and have them, feel empathy for me and whatever. And I've seen what works and what doesn't work for me, and what works for me is that I know that I'm building something for myself and for my people. And that doesn't mean that I'm shoving out and I won't work with any Dutch people, but that means that my primary focus is not trying to wake up people that don't even see a problem in their behavior and in their treatment of me. That is not, it's not my job, I tell her. And she couldn't see that, and she kept pressing on that I should. And
She's from
I
the
found it,
Netherlands, right? She was a
yeah,
Dutch student who came to
yeah,
Bonaire to work with you
yeah,
on this project, right? And she is of, I want to say, the language is so crazy. Is it Caucasian descent, European descent? Because you have Black
yes,
European and other people, different skin
yeah,
tones.
she's Caucasian, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And but I found that interesting that, again, even a well-meaning person, because she was trying to show me, "Oh, I need to stand up for this, I need to stand up for this." I was trying to understand the very fact that you're telling me how I should behave and handle this. It's very colonial in the way you're behaving. Because yes, you're trying to have me um, handle something, and I've told you this is how I handle this, and you're telling me no, my way is better, in a sense, because you
Mm,
keep bringing it up and you keep telling me that I should and I should and I should. And then this is what I mean, that even the most well-meaning that see the coloniality cannot fully understand how it is to be the one colonized. Yeah.
mm.
I know
Right.
this.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Wow, that's a good point you're making. A very interesting point. I think for Jamaica, being a former British colony, the way I have learned and have rationalized it more recently is the fact that the plantation owners, most majority of them left. They might have mixed and integrated with the local population. My family's one of them, right?
Hmm.
They eventually left, and those who stayed just fully integrated with the local people, and just, so we never really
Yeah.
had to live with that kind of heavy colonial weight that I think like people here in the
Mm.
US who still had to live with the people who once owned them. And for example, you guys are still considered a colony of the
We are
Netherlands,
still at yeah. There's discussion. Some people say, "Oh, it's a territory," but come on, it's still it's a colony. You can
right?
change the
Yeah.
terminology, but it's the same thing. Yeah.
Right, okay. And I've since learned that Jamaica continues to send funds to the UK even though it's considered
Mm.
independent since 1962, and still has not country has not gotten reparations for all of the how many years of free labor and what they extracted from the island, and the number of people who died, and the brutality of slavery and things like that. So,
Mm.
but I think people were able to breathe because it's still there. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as
Mhm.
heavy as in some places, and so
Yeah.
there's a very strong sense of identity, Jamaican identity, maybe more African than anything else, that's pretty strong on the island, and people were able to exist and breathe, and probably heal somewhat from the trauma.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of like colorism and other things that are on the island that still
Mm-hmm.
exist so many decades later, but
Yeah.
so yeah, wow, that's an interesting point that you're making. But obviously she came and she could see that there was some problems with
Yeah.
the interaction and what was and the way things are set up. So it's good for her.
Yeah.
That was a life lesson for her, and I wonder how it will
Yeah.
influence her as she moves forward in her journey.
Me too. And I had to realize, she's young. There's a 10-year gap between me and her, and also the gap of me already being in this system. And so she's just waking up to it. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna leave you for your lessons. It's your lessons to have, Yeah. But I'm happy that she at least saw that
Right,
side of
right.
it. Yeah.
So I want to talk a bit about the over tourism conversation and like what it looks like in the Caribbean and other places, perhaps globally, if you have the sense of like, what that looks like. Because you hear about
Yeah.
it, but I don't think a lot of people really understand like what does it look like on the ground.
Yeah, I think over tourism for us is happening especially with cruise ships. If I'm talking about the local Bonairean context, in the past we had, yeah, maybe um, just a couple of, I'm talking maybe 4 or 5 cruise ships a month, and now you have, yeah, you have like cruise ship seasons. And the thing with the cruise ships is that, as opposed to tourists that come here and stay here for, let's say, a month or 2 months, some stayed half a year, and would actually contribute to the local um, economy. So, go to the supermarkets, go to the restaurants, use the laundry. Um, the cruise ships are usually kind of like all inclusive floating hotels. And so once they get to a port, there's very little um, that they actually pour into the local economy, except for the pocket of those that own the port, the ones that do the taxi drives and that kind of thing. Um, and but at the same time, our government is saying, is doubling down. No, 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 we need the tourists. We need everything. It's like going everything for the tourist, right? Um, and so one asks, I don't know the exact budget and these things, but one is gonna ask then, is the amount that we are investing in tourism really coming back as it should, considering that we are now so heavily dependent on cruise ships. And the other thing with cruise ships is that it's coming, or I guess it already broke all of the reefs, right, by now. But we have our reefs are very close to the shore. So for the cruise ship to come in, it's also breaking our reefs.
Wow.
Um, in places such as, because I understood that Aruba has become an end stop for a lot of um, like Caribbean cruise ships, and I understood from an activist there that those cruise ships then unload all of their trash on Aruba, which Aruba does not really have the the management for their own trash, let alone a lot of these cruise ship trash. I'm not sure how they unload their their waste, but you have to think also of all of the human waste
Oh my
on top
goodness.
of cruise ships times. I don't know how many cruise ships there are, but these are all elements that make cruising or yeah cruise ships very it's unsustainable, and there's also a level of over consumption and abundance that happens on cruise ships that is also adding to unsustainability ultimately of cruise ships. The other side, you have the hotels, and what the hotels have been doing is really taking up like the nicest beaches. This is something that I've heard from different islands, and there's a thing that a beach should be public. Legally, they are public, but they build it in such a way that the locals can no longer get to their beach, or they put like these seats on it, and the seats are paid, so they think then that the whole beach should be reserved for the people on the seats. Um, you have in Aruba, because I'm taking Aruba as an example because they have a lot more hotels than us, and they're still building. And there is an activist there which I interviewed for my podcast. I think it was 2 years ago, and he is really at the front of the No More Hotels movement, because they keep building more and more hotels, and apparently the hotels are using some kind of scheme to not pay taxes, where that um, a new hotel has like exemption from paying tax for a certain amount of years. So what they do is once that year is reaching, they just change the name or they change the owner or something, so that they can keep using those the scheme. And it's also said, and there should be a report somewhere about this, which I'll be honest with you, I have to find it, but I've heard a lot of activists referring to um, that all that income that the Caribbean supposedly sees from tourism, 80% of that leaves the Caribbean. So there's investors and owners of the hotels and owners of the airlines. All of these people are outside of the Caribbean, actually, so that all the supposedly economic benefits of that tourism is going out. Um, so that is making that more and more people and activists are asking, well, what do we have? What is the benefit of tourism for us if we're not even keeping the money? They're destroying our ecosystems, to build hotels or to dump waste in, um, and yeah, what is the point? And yeah, that is, I think, yeah, stealing our beaches as well. So you have all of these components, which people are turning against, over tourism. And so obviously we know that to some extent we depend on the tourism, but I think people are really calling for regulating it, making sure that people are not abusing schemes such as that one in Aruba, that people are not constantly building new hotels and taking down trees that have been there for centuries, or disrupting ecosystems just for this tourism that ultimately we can question how much is it really benefiting us as local people in the Caribbean. It's clear that it's benefiting someone, but how is
Yeah,
it, benefiting us?
right. Very sad. Like the similar thing is happening in Jamaica. I wasn't fully aware of it, but I've heard when you travel and talk to locals and get connected to other people, you hear people say the same thing. There's a certain population that comes in and they own the grocery stores because they have accents or networks to get the products mailed in bulk or whatever, right? And so the locals can't really compete with that, and so they get all these incentives where every 5 years they go pay no taxes, and what they do, they just leave and another one comes back and just change the name and start over
Hmm.
again. So the island is benefiting no way from all of this money that they're eking out and taking out of the place.
Yeah.
um the jobs connected to like the tourist industry are given to people who are foreigners from other places, and so people who are capable and studied and have the experience, right, they study in tourism like you were encouraged to do,
Hmm.
have the training to take over some of these roles, but yet they still hire other people from elsewhere. And so
Yeah.
the beaches have been sold off to different hotels and the people can no longer access the beaches. There's less and less beaches available to the public. um I don't know about the waste part of it, but I haven't heard that conversation in Jamaica yet. But it probably, I'm sure it's happening somewhere. I wonder how they manage that, being a
Yeah.
larger island. But it's really sad. I mean, it's this whole still idea of capitalism and people just coming in and focused on their own stake
Hmm.
and not really balancing everybody at the table who's being impacted,
Yeah.
right? Thanks for educating us on that and what's really going on in that place. So I wonder, tell us a little bit more about this idea of climate refugees.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think I was mentioning before also, even with Bonaire, that with the sea level rising and just land is going to be lost, at least in the context of Bonaire. You have some places already there are being flooded, or that it's too hot to inhabit. And these people are going to, more and more as it becomes more extreme, these people are going to fled their countries, and a lot of them are coming up north, um, to America, or to the Netherlands, and the rest of Europe. And yeah, especially if you're talking about if it was lost maybe by sea level rising, would be very difficult to go back to your to where you lived before. It could have been, or it could be destroyed by extreme storms, and we've seen things like this happen already in Haiti. That all the houses were broken off and people move, and some don't move back. Right, it's not everyone are able even to move back and rebuild
Mhm.
and these type of things. So you are ironically, I say ironically because right now you see a lot of like the far right becoming popular across like the US, but also in Europe. And people are like, we don't want immigrants, but ironically this is going to be the biggest influx of immigrants is going to be for climate. And not only climate, you have the wars that are going on, and that is even more ironic, or similarly ironic, because a lot of these countries in Europe and the US, they're funding the wars, And at the same time, when those people flee, whether it's climate or conflict, they're fleeing to find a safer space, which is usually the country that's bombing them to begin with. The people there are like, we don't want you. And I think there was, I don't know, do you know Fela Kuti? He's
Yes. Is it from Africa? Is it South Africa
yeah,
or is it Nigerian? One
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nigerian. And his son, actually, there was a video of his son. He's also a musician now, and he made the point that um, each week there's another cost. Each week it's it's free. And I'm not saying it's bad thing, right? Because I was also advocating, for free Palestine, free Sudan, free Congo, and these things. But he's saying actually you should start in your own backyard. And say people in the Netherlands and people in the US should be saying free our states from far right movements, free our countries from these politicians that are funding uh, wars, that are funding more fossil fuels, that are defunding climate adaptation um, projects and initiatives that start there. And then automatically Palestine will be free, Sudan will be free, Congo will be free, Haiti will be free, all of these places will be free. But we have to start looking at, okay, who is actually funding, and what are they funding, what are they not funding. And a lot of time that will lead you back to the US and Europe. Um, and I'm not saying that China and these places, because I think they're also involved, but a lot of times the biggest stake is the biggest arrow is pointing that way, right? Um, of who is funding kind of like these wars and um, anti, I'm going to say anti climate things, because as you see, they defund the initiatives that are trying to lessen the effects of climate change, and they're funding the ones that actually have a big stake at causing the climate crisis to begin with. For example, the oil companies, as I mentioned, they're funding the oil companies and the fossil fuel. They knew already. I think it was maybe somewhere in the 80s. They already knew the effects if they didn't know earlier, but they knew pretty early on from their own scientists what the effects were gonna be of so much fossil fuel use. Yet instead of doing something about it, they hit these research and they just continued. And now instead of defunding them, they're defunding the ones trying to solve the issue that they solved, that they
Mhm.
are trying to solve the issue that they caused, that they knew they were going to cost, and funding these people still. So I think, yeah, we have to start looking at that. Of course, we should give attention to the people that are now currently suffering from the effects um, of all of these things. But I'm very an advocate of looking at the roots of the things as well. Um, where where is it coming from? Why do they have so many arms? Why, who's benefiting from all of this? And of course, I realize that can be kind of, I think people fear those kind of questions, kind of dangerous questions, because these people have a lot of power, and that can cause fear in people. But if we don't, then I think the outcome is going to be much worse for all of us. So we do have to also look at these things, like not only, okay, people are fleeing because of climate and conflict, but what is causing the climate crisis? There's things that you can do, but ultimately I think the industries and these things are causing a lot more climate damage than you and me individually can ever do. um, saying don't try to live as sustainably as you can. Of course, do that as well, but there should be some kind of balance in how we look at it. And I always try to look at the whole of the picture. And for me, that's it, because people fleeing is kind of an effect of a cause. And yeah, the cause is, yeah, that I was saying just now.
Right, right. Yeah, and you were alluding earlier to an idea that when you were doing development management, you got so frustrated with how you wanted to solve a certain problem in a certain region and realized that there were so many players, stakeholders involved.
Hmm.
And everybody has their own interests that they're pushing and gunning for. And
Yeah.
in order to get to any sort of consensus on a way to move forward, it's like sometimes you end up losing the goal that you're actually going for, right? In order
Mhm.
to appease some people at the table. So it gets
Yeah.
really complicated. I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And but yet that's, if there's one part of my studies that I really enjoy, is seeing how you can do that. We call that facilitating multi-stakeholder processes. And obviously, in the context that I just gave now, it's so much more complicated. But you can, there's small things that you can do in your community to try to solve as much as you can there. And I think we have to start looking at ripple effects of things, because we can't possibly solve something so big in one go. But if we all start in our communities trying to solve things and bringing these different stakeholders together, um, the hope is that that will have a ripple effect on the bigger players as well, or that we won't be, at least won't be as dependent on the bigger players, than that they would have to change their ways at some point.
Right, right. Citizen tourism or citizen advocates
Yeah.
on the local level, right? In your everyday action. So I wonder what in your exposure in the space, like what are some things that you would encourage people to do in their own personal actions, like every everyday citizen, like what can people do to not work against their own interests or um, you know, to create some sort of a ripple or something. How can
Hmm.
they feel empowered? Because sometimes it can be so you feel powerless when you look at the grand scheme of things and the players that are involved and the money that they have behind them. You can feel quite powerless to think that you could bring any change at all.
Yeah, I think the thing we can do is have control over ourselves and the decisions that we take. Why do I say that? Is that, for example, I try to live as sustainably as I can with the means that I have. And I always question, is this what I'm buying right now or using right now? Is it necessary? Is it sustainable? Is it by a company that's funding wars somehow? And you can find kind of lists of the boycotts, and why people are boycotting them. I think that would be the easiest way to start voting with your money. Um, the second thing is you can get involved. You have organizations such as like Greenpeace, or I don't know what you have in America. You have your own organizations that that is like helping immigrants. It's look for a cause and a community that you want to be around, and see how you can help. See what you can contribute to that. Um, and I think I would like more people to start to be interested in and try to understand how economics, society, and environment, how that influences each other, and um, the how it affects each other. And I think if a lot more people have that understanding, you would understand how, for example, you choosing to buy Starbucks, that money is going, for example, to buy arms in Israel, was then using those arms to shoot at Palestinians that are trying to get food. So there's I think if more of us have kind of this understanding that my action here, even though it looks so disconnected from what's happening over there, can still have an impact over there. And I'm going to do my other best to limit my impact. I might not be able to go on the Freedom Flota thing and go and bring food for them, but the least I can do is not, I don't know, buy the Starbucks or um, use
And
booking that.
let's be a
You
little
know.
bit careful. Do we Is that a fact that that company is in fact channeling funds towards we don't want to get in too
Yeah.
political or
No,
too
no.
involved in this conversation and kind of put kind of things
Yeah,
out there that could be perceived that the company is doing that. So let's
yeah.
kind of
I would
be
say
careful
the best thing is to look at the BDS list, and there they will explain who and what and why they're boycotting things. Because I don't
PDS.
wanna
What's the name of that?
B BDS, boycott, divest, sanction.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, but I don't want to. I don't know the exact details right now in my mind because I just kind of memorize who I'm buying with and who not. But you can go, you can search it, you can see there's also boycotts for Congo and these things, so you can search, and there's a lot of information out there on what company funding what and why people are trying to boycott what.
Right. And I know if you're investing in the stock market, I think they have this term that they use, ESG, um, to determine if a company is socially responsible with the way that they invest their money and their influence and things like that. So that's another place.
Yeah,
But when you say, what's the website for that place that you listed? BDS?
boy,
Is it
B.
BDS.com?
Let me see for you. It's bdsmovement.net.
Okay. Right. And you can just Google ESG and see and read up about it and see where you can get more details depending on what company you're supporting and just
Yeah.
get more educated on how they're using their funds to influence the rest of the world and our everyday lives.
Yeah, and you also
So
have one last thing. You also have things like the Ethical Consumer, which is a UK website, and they research things and they tell you exactly how they rate it and why they rated it like that, and they give you suggestions depending on what you have to buy.
very good. Those are three good ones. BDS, the movement.net. Look into the ESG conversation, and then ethical consumer is another one. Okay, very good. A lot of times we don't know that the way we spend our own money is working against our own interests, right? Or coming
Yeah.
back and harming us, not necessarily harming other people or larger conflicts that are going on around the world,
Hmm.
or larger issues, but harming our own household and our own communities, our own street where we live. So
Yeah.
it's important for us to really be more aware of how that's happening and how that's taking place. Um, yeah, so we're coming towards the end of our conversation here. You've given me a lot of time, and I want to be respectful of that. So, you've shared so much. I'm so grateful for the conversation. We usually end the show by one, giving you a chance to talk about your own work and where people can find you online, and if you have any product that you're trying to sell. And then, but we always ask you throughout your immigrant journey, going to the Netherlands and anywhere else you've traveled, can you share a humorous moment in that experience where you made a mistake? Or some sort of a faux pas, as they call it, and how you handled it. Um,
Oh, I made a lot of mistakes throughout the year. I'm like, which
yeah,
one do you want?
And if it's really personal, we're starting what we call a behind the scenes part of our show, to kind of build up support for our Patreon account for
Uh,
people to contribute like $5, $10, $25 for us to keep the work that we're doing. So we can always we'll be planning to share these types of conversation in the behind the scenes. So only people who pay will be able to see.
okay. Well, I'm still like, yeah, which one of it? There's so many mistakes that I've made throughout the years. But um, I think one that, so I was at, I don't know if it's necessarily um, throughout my trajectory of going there, but I was already there. And I was in the board of a foundation, and I there was a lot going on, and a lot was depending on me, and someone was kind of not getting in line, and I ended up writing a very, very angry email that I regret to this day, but um, that has taught me to not react in anger, and really sit with myself and my emotion and why am I feeling a certain way before I react to anything. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Um, Okay, not quite. But is there
No, okay.
something that you laugh about, like something funny, like you
Mm.
misinterpreted something and you just laugh at yourself
Ah,
because it was interpreted as, funny by the other person or funny by you, or you laugh about it
no.
today, even though it was painful or really serious back then, but just something humorous, like a mistake that you made.
I like that. Mm, I'm sure there are, but I'm not recalling.
Right. Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not recalling it at the moment.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's
I mean, I
fine.
laugh about my example now, even though, but I'm
So
not sure
somebody
if the
was
other
getting
person
in
laughs.
line and you sent an email to the person or to somebody else reporting their behavior.
To the person and to the rest of the board as well in the CC, which was not a great um, point of action to have. But I guess I was learning to, as I said, I came from this um, this culture that we don't really speak up easily, and I was learning to speak up, but then I took it too far. so, so I had to reel it back a little bit. Um, yeah, and it's at the moment it cost me a lot because it was one of those points that kind of we never really finished that project properly. Um, and so I did learn to okay, I want to be honest, and I've kind of um, gone too far in the honesty and speaking my mind side to reel it all the way back in as it was before. But at the same time, I do have to. It is good to kind of measure and see what is worth saying and what is maybe not the moment to say certain things.
Hmm. And I've had my own journey with that. It's kind of like that muscle that you're developing of standing in your own agency and saying, no, I don't like that. That doesn't feel good. You can't behave that way. It's harmful to me. And sometimes, because we're coming from places where, speaking up is not always encouraged in a lot of communal collectivist cultures. there's a lot of silence really on the other side. For there's more emphasis on community cohesion and people pleasing and things like that. And so when you get into a place where you're trying to manage your own emotion around things that you don't like and that displease you, and setting healthy boundaries, sometimes the pendulum can swing way to one side until you really find that balance. And so I've had my
Yeah.
experiences too, where I get really upset about things and I handle it in the heat of the moment, and it wasn't the right response. It wasn't really, how do you say, measured. And so, sometimes, but sometimes, it's just part of the process. And so if somebody's listening and you're going through that, just forgive yourself and move on, and you'll get over it, and
Yeah.
you will learn from the, probably, like, responding with too much power, to be a little bit more measured next time. The experience,
Yeah.
you do learn a lot from it if it's happening to you. But yeah, it's not always easy when you're coming from, like, not having a voice to now unmuting yourself and speaking up and letting people know that their behavior is harmful to you.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Agree.
right. So tell us, how do we find you online, Manarak of Gray? You also have another podcast called Poison Honey. How do people get in touch
Yes.
and listen to your podcast and connect with you if they want to collaborate or anything else?
You can find me on Instagram at manarak.art, and that is also the same for my website, so manarak.art as well. And I do have Poison Honey podcast and Creation podcast on YouTube, and I have my kind of behind the scenes YouTube channel, which I'm now considering to join everything under one channel. But for now, you can, yeah, if you go to Manarak of Gray on YouTube, you can find both channels below anyway. So I think that that's most easier to just look for me, and you will find my podcast and everything also. There, if you want to get in contact, it's info@manarak.art. And yeah, I do have books. I have A Tale of Her, which is my story of heartbreak and healing with poetry. And I have Centea, though Centea is not as readily available. I think you have to email me for that, because I'm still in the process of seeing how I want it to be online, since it's limited edition. Um, and aside from that, what else do I have? Yeah, I think that's it. You can follow me and see what else is coming.
Yes, you're a busy lady. Lots going on. At 34, you're very in tune with the influence and impact you want to have on the world, and we wish you the very best.
Yeah,
Lots of
thank you.
support. Hopefully, our this interview will get you access to our wide audience, and lots of connection will come from you sharing up with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Yes, it was great. I was learning so much as I sat here, and I'm going to end the live stream. Thanks you for those of you who popped in the room as we were discussing. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining live. We'll edit and share this on YouTube and on our podcast platforms and other places. So thanks for joining. We're ending this live stream now.